Great, thank you very much. And now the representative from Oregon, Salinas.
Thank you, Chair Babin, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. Like some of my colleagues on the Democratic side, I am deeply concerned by the administration's attacks on science across government, including their unilateral decision to eliminate EPA's Office of R&D. And while I do appreciate our witnesses' concerns about the chemical safety review process impeding innovation and therefore a lot of processes within business, EPA is charged with protecting human health and the environment. And so we have to figure out what this balance looks like. Dr. Myberg, in Oregon, Nike's working to innovate safer, more sustainable replacements for hazardous chemicals. But as long as dangerous chemicals remain on the market, there's less economic incentive for companies like Nike to invest in cleaner, more sustainable alternatives. How can Congress best support the development of safer chemistries? And what role does strong independent science have in supporting our competitiveness with customers that actually value sustainability?
Congresswoman, thank you so much for that question. That speaks to a couple of things. One is EPA's ability to use TSCA to address existing chemical risks as well as new chemicals, that historically new chemicals have always had urgency behind them. I'll pass aside for the moment the 90-day deadline set in 1976, and for 50 years has been an issue in terms of meeting that deadline, but that's always been the one that's sort of yelled the loudest. And the one that's been most held up has been the review of existing chemicals. Now, the 2016 Lautenberg amendments were intended to help provide additional tools for that, but it's still been a very slow process. And to your point, one of the things you can do to help stimulate innovation, which includes both efficacy and safety, is to address some of the chemicals on the market now that may not meet the same criteria that you would want to have for a new chemical.
Great. Building on that, foreign markets, including the EU, have significantly, oftentimes more stringent chemical safety requirements than the U.S. By undermining the scientific rigor behind EPA's chemical safety determinations and limiting some of the transparency into the data, are we making it harder for American businesses to participate in some of these markets?
That's an excellent question because, as you know, most companies do business all over the world, and many parts of the world have, particularly in Europe with the REACH protocols, have some pretty stringent markets. And what I hear back from businesses, they want to have consistent requirements to make sure that they can do business everywhere. In fact, that was one of the main arguments behind the 2016 amendments, was that in the absence of more stronger EPA authorities, individual states, and I think Oregon was one of them, were adopting their own requirements. And so the idea was to strengthen TSCA so that in exchange for providing more consistency across the country. And if the belief is that TSCA is not doing the job, then I think you may see a resurgence of some of these specific things which would create additional impediments for business.
Thank you. Mr. Corkwell and Dr. Gross, in your testimonies, you both emphasize the importance of long-term regulatory certainty and a reliance on sound science for fostering innovation at your companies. Does limiting EPA's access to the best available science improve the long-term certainty of chemical regulations? And does it make it the agency's determinations or more or less susceptible to change as political priorities actually shift over time?
I'll start. I think when we said what is very important to us is a predictable timeline, and predictability doesn't mean predictable for 2 years or 4 years or 5 years. As you heard, many of these developments are 5 and 10 years long. We need predictability in the long term, but we do need a process that looks at the science and the actual technology associated with those products. At Lubrizol, we make some very, very specialty chemistry, which means we are looking at very small tweaks in molecules to give us different performance or better environmental aspects. So when we lump all chemistries of a type together, we miss out on that opportunity to see the fine differentiations between them, which is most of the research my company does.
Thank you. Dr. Gross?
This is definitely an important question for Boeing in that we have those extended timelines. You mentioned the European Union's REACH organization. One of the things there, Boeing definitely looks during our development cycle, we look at all of those global regulations as well because we are a global company. And knowing what potential challenges are coming forward, so what may be regulated in the future, not just what's in the pipeline today, is definitely part of that look that we go to. So again, going back to, you know, visibility, it's not just what's in today for, you know, a new extended use. It's what's potentially coming up the pipeline and then what's potentially going to be regulated in the future. So, you know, when we talk about ambiguity, it's across that whole life cycle. So improving that visibility of what may be a concern 10 years from now versus what's a concern today would definitely benefit us as a manufacturing company.
Thank you. My time's expired. I yield back.